Well, as I said last week, hide the children, hide the pets, do something, put your seatbelts on. It's another week with Hanok Young, and nobody knows where that may go. Good afternoon in Israel, Hanok.
Well, thank you, Mike. It is true. I least of all know what's about to come out, but well, first of all, let's start on the kinder, gentler note. Without realizing it, last week we launched into what has turned out to be, based on the amount of emails that I've received, our single most popular feature. That is the birthday greetings. Now, I do want to caution people, please don't send me notes about the dates of your loved ones that you would like us to announce next November and December. I will not remember. So, okay, let's jump right into it. Hayom yom huledet, hayom yom huledet, hayom yom huledet le Ayala. Today, June 2nd, my fabulous firstborn, friend of Michael Clayton,
Yes.
Ayala Young, is having a birthday. Do. You say it's your, yes, it is. Now, why am I announcing it on the Israel Update? Ayala claims not to have the time to watch the Israel Update, but she's the one that said to me, Abba, when you and Mike record, if you place an additional pillow under your phone, you won't be looking down. Now, how she figured that one out without ever looking, I don't know.
Well, the
I
truth
allow
is,
also people.
I actually sent her an email because, you know, her and I have communication behind your back in order to try to team up and take control of you.
And as the saying goes, how's that been working out for you, Mike?
Yeah.
Okay. But I could go on and pick about Ayala, but we have another birthday coming up. Rosie Rose Connor. Yes. What would a week be without a birthday to celebrate of one of the infamous and numerous Connor sisters? Yeah. It just, I see the look on your face. Yeah, this boy is risking a beating. It's true.
Yeah. Well, what I'm also thinking is that you have a lot of time on your hands and you're scouring Facebook to see whose birthday is this week.
Way too much time on my hands. But our dear friend Rose Connor, Rosie, is 19. And you know, I'm immediately reminded of that song, you know, in Fiddler on the Roof, Sunrise Sunset, you know, is this the little girl I carried? You know, I don't remember growing old. Yeah, man. How is it that all these young people are getting older? Thank God we're not aging, Mike.
I know.
Really.
Yeah. Well, you gotta be careful now with picking on Rosie because that is Kaya's best friend, and you know, Kaya may not let you into your room when you come here. One of these days.
You know, it did dawn on me that my next visit to Franklin, I'll be walking around the room saying, who's been sleeping in my bed? So, you know, I'm it's the classic, be afraid, be very afraid.
Yes.
Anyway.
Okay, so
let's
hey,
move on to.
I heard that you guys have a president, and you know, one thing that we share between Israel and the United States is that for the most part, our presidents are irrelevant.
Yes. The only difference is ours is officially irrelevant. Yours is de facto irrelevant.
Well,
that's the only difference.
Another aspect of that is that yours actually might know he's irrelevant. Ours has to be told. Yeah.
So it seems. The bigger news, of course, is that we're coming down to the wire regarding our formation of a government. And what I thought would be helpful today is if I gave some very clear, and this is the hardest part for me, concise explanations of what this new government might be and what it isn't, that will help, so many of our listeners read the news from Israel, and our parliamentary democracy, our coalition-based parliamentary democracy, is so different than the American system that so many of our listeners are used to. I thought I could help clarify things a bit. Okay. So first of all, whatever Netanyahu says, put your fingers in your ears and say, la, 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 I can't hear you, la, 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 because he's distributing a lot of fertilizer at this point. Okay. There are a few key points. Netanyahu is screaming that this potential new government, because it's not a done deal yet, is a quote unquote left-wing government. Israelis are obsessed with the terms right-wing and left-wing. Now, for someone like myself who considers himself extreme right-wing, let me tell you something. Those terms in Israel don't mean a single thing. It means diddly squat. Let me explain. Binyamin Netanyahu, by the way, personal pet peeve, Bibi is the diminutive of Binyamin, Benjamin. In Hebrew, it's spelled Bet Yud, B-B. In English, that would be B-I-B-I. So, even though, as Americans, y'all may want to spell your name like our dear friend B.B. Stevens, from Hebrew, it doesn't quite work out that way. What does that mean? Absolutely irrelevant, but it's a pet peeve. So there you go. Okay.
You and the president share something in common. You said something irrelevant.
Exactly. So now Netanyahu claims to be right-wing, but he is a centrist.
Yeah.
He was prime minister in 96. Let's forget that. He's been prime minister for the last 12 years. Sadly, we don't have term limits in Israel. Expect to see that one coming up in the Knesset before too long. In the 12 years that he has been prime minister, he has not sponsored a single piece of legislation that could be considered right-wing. He has largely frozen construction in Judea and Samaria, and in his coalitions has always included people who he blames for moderating him. He is an autocratic megalomaniac, but he uses other people to blame. That's one thing. The other thing is the Haredi parties, the ultra-Orthodox parties that he has partnered with over the years. And this is very confusing. And I realized recently by listening to some American Israelis talk, growing up in America, when you hear that someone is religious, you think of the terms right-wing and conservative. Most of Christian leadership in America, not all, but most of Christian leadership in America, traditionally, when you hear religious, it's been conservative and right-wing. That's why the term right-wing doesn't apply.
Yeah.
The ultra-Orthodox have no right-wing political agenda. They have never been fully supportive of Jewish towns, villages, and communities in Judea and Samaria. Never, not once, and have always backed territorial compromise. They are concerned with one thing and one thing only: their particular specific constituents. In all the years that Netanyahu has included, and Netanyahu is not the only one, included the ultra-Orthodox parties, they have never once promoted any kind of Torah-based education or values to anyone else in Israeli society other than their own communities. Very important. Very important for everyone to understand. They are only totally, absolutely about themselves. They are deathly afraid of this new unity coalition because the finance minister is supposed to be Avigdor Lieberman. I'm going to not deal too much in names today because I know it'll confuse everyone even more.
Yeah.
But Lieberman, as finance minister, wants to impose that the school budgets for any school that doesn't teach our core curriculum here are radical subjects like math, Hebrew. I mean, really, really crazy radical stuff. This isn't like, the 87 genders or no, this is basic stuff. Any school that refuses to teach that will have its budgets cut. And guess which community schools do not teach that? That's right, boys and girls, the Haredi ultra-Orthodox parties.
Wow.
These are the guys that don't serve in the army, that don't care to be involved in society, and are willing to milk the state of Israel for every single shekel without giving anything of themselves to anyone else in the country. The bizarre fights of who is a Jew, it all sits at their doorstep. But let's move on. The potential coalition is not a left-wing coalition. It is a unity coalition. It goes across the spectrum. And again, this government may not happen, but it's important to discuss the concepts behind it because I think it's important for the future of Israel. Now, I know I'm sounding incredibly moderate and speaking as if I was under control of my emotions. And it's a very, very, well, let's just say I'm not quite used to it. Judging by the expression on your face, Mike, you're not either, which is scary. Achdut, unity. Remember something about your Jewish brothers and sisters. During the Great Revolt against Rome, the one where the temple gets burned down, the Romans were at the gates of Jerusalem, and we Jews, we zealots, we, the militants, were busy slaughtering each other in Jerusalem on the Temple Mount itself, burning the food stores. So please understand, Ephraim often looks at us as if we're the normal grown-up older brother. Yeah. Now understand something. When Ephraimites say to me, I understand for restoration to happen that we, on our side of the family, have to get our acts together. And Mike, all the work that you've done, our dear friends with B'nai Yosef North America, the Congress of B'nai Yosef, there have been many efforts to try to help that happen. But understand something. We, on the Jewish side of the family, are so incredibly divided and divisive here in Israel that we need to get back to basics and focus on the fact that it's nice to say that all Jewish people are brothers and sisters with each other, but we need to do that without actually hating each and every one of the other within our groups. And no government is ever perfect, but there's a tremendous element of potential prophetic significance that's about to happen if this government is brought in. Naftali Bennett would be our Rosh Memshala, our president. Naftali Bennett is what's called, and again, I'm going to use the Hebrew terminology so we can get away from some of the English, what's called Dati Le'umi. Dati is religious, Le'umi is national religious. These are the guys with the knitted kippot, the guys that serve in the army, the guys that build up Judea and Samaria. Okay, why is that important? And again, I'm using the term Dati or Dati Le'umi instead of religious, because when you think of religious, you're thinking of, I don't know, Billy Graham, you're thinking of Oral Roberts, maybe, I don't know, but I want to get out of the mindset. We have never had a prime minister that's been Dati Le'umi, never. We've never had a religious prime minister, ever. Menachem Begin, of blessed memory, was traditional and very respectful. Yitzhak Shamir was also respectful. And by the way, those were our two only right-wing prime ministers. Benjamin Netanyahu, who gave away Hebron, is not right-wing. Okay, and another important point I have to mention. There are those who will say to you, particularly, those Facebook scholars that will say to you, well, Netanyahu wanted a right-wing government. Netanyahu was asked by members of his own party, Likud, to step aside for 1 year, just 1 year, still be a member of Knesset, but for 1 year, let someone else in Likud. He refused. He is all about himself. Now, I don't want anyone to walk away from watching this broadcast saying, well, Hanoch said, so it must be true. I want you to think about what I'm sharing. One more thing about Naftali Bennett, and then I'm actually going to shut up. I need to breathe every few minutes. And this is where we point the finger and blame Michael Clayton. One of the things, don't look shocked, Mike. You're going to like this, seriously. One of the things that you've always taught, Mike, is the teachings of Harav Kook. Rav Kook, the first chief rabbi, quote unquote, in the land of Israel here, never believed in a difference between the holy and the profane, the secular. Yeah. For him, it was the holy and the not yet holy. He worked with everyone. Everyone was doing something sacred, whether they were draining the swamps or whether they were learning Torah all day. Naftali Bennett is cut from that mold. Something really that we should all chew upon. I think prophetically, this would be a huge step towards the restoration of all of Israel if we on the Jewish side of the family get our acts together. Not just simply have someone in charge that can actually look and make a decision about how we can reopen our borders again, but someone who can run the country. And don't believe, and I got to say one more. I keep saying, I'm not going to say anything else, but then I keep saying, well, that's the tour guide in me. This government, whatever their quote unquote political affiliation of each of the ministers, the potential minister of education is actually someone, she happens to be right wing, but is actually someone who has a PhD in education. Our current minister of education is a former general who was given the position simply because he had to be a cabinet minister. The reason we got our clocks cleaned with COVID and the reason our hospitals were collapsing is because our health minister, Yaakov Litzman, Haredi guy, got the position and did nothing and never put in for a budget increase. Anyway, your thoughts, Mike?
Okay, so
I'm smiling too much today.
Yeah, I know you got me kind of confused here. I'm wondering who I actually am on the Zoom with. It looks like, it sounds like, but okay, so I'm thinking the ultimate photo op in Israel. We have one in America, which is Memorial Day we had of remembering those who have fallen in battle through these years.
Yes.
Which has been turned into mattress sales. but
There,
the ultimate photo op is the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier here in America. The ultimate photo
that's
op
incredible.
in Israel is a kippah going to the wall and putting your hand on it and acting like you're praying. Every person, I mean, I can go back to Ariel Sharon, just prior to the Gaza pullout, went to the wall as a kippah and puts his hand on the wall and gives away Gaza. You know, Naftali Bennett, we could talk, you know, the current thing on Facebook, new president, kippah, wall. I mean, this is the photo op of Israel.
It's what we do.
Yeah, just because someone goes to the wall and puts a kippah on is very similar to my statement of just because you stand in a garage does not make you a car. Okay, just kind of a thought to consider. You know, stand in McDonald's all day. Don't go around saying you identify as a Happy Meal. It's not going to work. So we need to be careful of photo ops, of thinking, well, that is, you know, that's this person because, and somehow that doesn't translate from, you know, we know that in America, politicians are politicians. Somewhere in Israel, there's this concept. It's like the concept of, you know, well, I went to the Holy Land. The first thing that I figured out in May of 1998 is that's like an, you know, it may be a holy land, but it's got some people there that not living quite that up to that term. And even though they may look,
Oh, sir.
you know, they may look religious. So what? You know, if they're
Yeah, it's just a uniform.
if their
It's
foundation
just a uniform.
But you know what you said about Bennett, that is, I mean, this is transformative in my own mind, that he would have been a protege of Rav Kook. Rav Kook, to me, is one of the most intriguing men. I know that you know, you grew up with Rav Mir Kahana, of blessed memory. The stories you told me of Rav Kahana are over the top amazing. But I see a lot of things going back to even possibly some of what Rav Kahana was doing tied to Rav Kook. And if anybody's never, you know, if you've never read anything of Rav Kook, it's Kook, I believe. You can get there's a newsletter that comes. I was just reading it this morning. Of a Talmudic interpretation discussion that Rav Kook had. He was teaching at a yeshiva, and this man, this was, I mean, this is, you know, 100 years ago, I guess. This young man had enrolled in yeshiva, but his father had a grapevine. He had a vineyard, and so he ended up honoring his father by staying at the vineyard for another 2 weeks, and ended up being late to the yeshiva. The day that he walked in, Rav Kook is the one teaching. Rav Kook asked him why you weren't here. And he told him, thinking that Rav Kook is going to say, you know, well, you should have left and come here and studied Torah. Instead, Rav Kook was so excited that this man had taken this time, not only honoring his father, but working the land and bringing it forth. So Rav Kook did not see this, you know, well, I've got to just study Torah over on this side, or I've just got to work the land over on this side. Rav Kook saw the marriage of the two. It's like I've said to people, if you want to understand Torah, grow a tomato plant. Because as you're studying the Torah and you're growing the tomato plant, the two will mesh together and teach you the complete message that's in those books.
You know, it's really funny that you just mentioned that about the plant. Our dear friend Dan Ryder in Canada just wrote me the other day, and out of nowhere he asked me, like, do you garden a lot? Is that your hobby? So I explained to him, Dan, I'm a city boy. I mean, I really am.
Yeah, he
So what
really
was
is.
fascinating, it is in his response back, he wrote, quote, I bet that Michael Clayton grows a lot in his garden. And I'm thinking, okay, so congrats to Mike, and you're right about that. But it's almost like, well, you were a tour guide, but Mike not only was the tour leader, he has a garden. So Dan, if you're watching this, I love you too, man. But you better bring me maple syrup again the next time you come to Israel, because otherwise we're done.
Yeah. I have a
You
garden.
know,
I know how to start the lawnmower and the weed eater, and but I do have the infamous picture. I'll post it one day of Hanok petting a goat for the first time in his life.
Yeah, well, you know, listen, I did grow up within striking distance of the Bronx Zoo, and but actually, come to think of it, when I was growing up, the animals kept in cages were the ones that were safe from the residents of the Bronx. But that's a whole different type of update. So again, bottom line is we don't have information yet. Today, I think at midnight our time, the mandate is supposed to run out. Netanyahu personally is doing everything he can to undercut it. He actually said that it was illegal for Yair Lapid to have the mandate to form the government and for Bennett to be the prime minister first. Meanwhile, he was offering everyone, let's make a deal. By the way, except for anyone else in his own party. Prediction, if Netanyahu is not included in the next government, expect for someone else to run the Likud in the next few years.
Yeah.
You heard it here first.
Okay. Quick thoughts on an Iranian warship catches fire and is sinking. The news is reporting this as unclear circumstances as Mideast tensions on rise.
Well, I would just say that to me, quote unquote, italics, unclear circumstances, just about say it all. The fact that it's their largest warship that's in the midst of sinking, well, again, we go back to the Aramaic of the Talmud, where we learn the phrase tough darts. The Iranians are not only running helter-skelter to get nuclear weapons, but they are also arming the Lebanese, the Iraqis, the Houthis in Yemen. What we just saw from Gaza is a very, very, very tiny taste of conflict ahead of us. But yeah, that's why we need a government. And by the way, the government is not left. Israelis are never left wing on security, but we need to take care of us within Israel. We need to rebuild the economy. We need to, I mean, Bennett and Ayelet Shaked, the number 2 of Yamina, are getting death threats from the right wing. Seriously. I mean, this is sick. This is really sick.
Yeah, this is going back 2,000 years. I mean, death threats from one party to another. This is literally history being coming about again in the midst of Israel.
Sadly.
Well, hey, happy birthday to one of my absolutely favorite Israelis, Ayala.
I know that's not me. I know that's not me.
Yeah, she's a deer.
Well, Ayala does mean female deer. Yeah. And I do have to remind you, when she's come to see you and to meet some of our dear friends from Connect, if some of them have the temerity to mention to her, gee, we really like your Abba. Gee, we think he's really funny. Gee, he's a good tour guide. She pleads with them, remember?
Yeah.
Please don't encourage him.
Oh, yeah.
Don't encourage him.
Yeah. I'm kind of one of the first ones to lead that call, actually. But
Well, that's why you guys get along so well.
yeah, and Ayala is the one that is responsible for me having the phrase that when I go to Israel, I'm going to have an Ayala, a Yochanan Ayala, which is a John Deere. And I got that because I met a very dear
That's right.
person. So happy
Bada bump.
birthday. And I can't wait to get back and to spend a little time with her on Ben Yehuda Street. And
Absolutely.
from this point, make sure that you send your name and your date of birth. Go ahead and put your age that you're going to be turning there, so that Hanok does not have, I mean, he doesn't have much time, as you know, so he doesn't have time to actually figure out the date. So go ahead and send him an email with your name, date of birth, and any special requests that you'd like to have from him as he announces your birth date on our program, and you become an international
Yes.
star 3 seconds in the limelight.
No, absolutely. And extra bonus points. Well, first of all, to dear Rosie, please don't mess up the room. We do have to share it. Different times of the year. Don't cast aspersions. But extra points to any of our listeners that are not one of the 37 Connor sisters. That'd be great too. But don't worry, it's okay. It's all good.
I'll be seeing them on Shabbat, and I'm sure you will, as many times, you will be a topic of conversation, possibly that I won't tell you about. So,
okay.
Take care. Be safe. Appreciate you taking the time.
My pleasure. Maybe we'll have a government next week. Who knows?
You never know. And if we do, hey, the bus is still parked. We're looking forward to getting back on it. And
we need to.
I mean, we could have worse places to park the bus than up on the Golan Heights.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
The tour will continue. Shalom, Hanok.
Take care. Shalom. Bye-bye.